Okay, so let's quickly run through files, folders, and the computer, how it's storing data. Exercise 1 on the GIS course, SVG 051. What we have here, this front window is an Explorer window, which will look a little different on your computer probably. I have my computer in this dark mode, whatever we want to call it. If we go to remote desktop, so this is remote desktop, you can access it via the school's webpage. If we go to the full desktops here, we can see we've got these, we download these links, open those up in remote desktop. When we come to it, we will get to something like this. This is the CAD server one. And if we click on this icon here, we get up an Explorer window. And this time it's white instead of black. It's the same thing, exactly the same program. We can see here we've got this quick links in a tree form here. And in this main panel here, we have all the objects that are in this home's location. And then we have the address bar up here, plus some tools. We'll wait with showing this one. I'll go back to the Explorer that I have on my computer first. So let's just do that. So this is my computer, my local computer. This is not a remote desktop. This is the Explorer showing what my computer has. And this is a little different from what you have, not just because of the color, it's different, but also because I actually have access to H:, because this is a work computer and it's been set up to link with that. Your computer, when you're sitting at home, won't have H:, but what you will have is C:. Guaranteed. If you're sitting on a Windows machine or a Linux machine, you will have C:. It's very unlikely that somebody's gone in and maliciously changed the C to something else. That's probably going to break things. It's going to be called C:. If you're sitting on a Mac, it's not called C:, anymore. Mac uses a different name for it, the hard disk, I think. But it's the same thing. This is just an old convention, A, B, C, D. A is long gone, B was hardly ever in use. C has just been around for a long time as the name for the locally stored hard drive in your computer where the operating system sits. So on C:, this is where Windows is actually stored. All the bits of programming that make up Windows or Linux, if you're using Linux, they'll be stored there. But also there should be room for other files as well that aren't the program files, but also your documents if it's your computer. Alternatively, you may store your files, your data on another partition of the same physical hard drive. It might be called D:, for example, or maybe not. Maybe it's stored on C:. These are technical details. We don't need to worry about them too much, but C:, is where stuff is stored. H:, which you'll be using on when you're connected to the remote desktop, there's no operating system stored there. That is purely for file storage for your stuff. And it's on a server. The actual physical drive where this stuff is stored is at the university, and you access it over a network. So it's not actually in your computer. But all of these things are attached to this. This is supposed to represent my actual physical computer above the hard drive, above the C drive, the unit that you can hold in. That's the name for my computer, as it were. And then I can click on this C drive. So this is the sort of quick links, and these can be expanded. If we look here, I can expand these into a sort of tree form. But still, this is going to show the content. So if I click on C:, there, or I could have, if I go back to there, I can click on, give it a second, it takes a while because Explorer is actually a pile of, as you can see, because this is 2022 and the home computer's been around for a good 30, 40 years, it still takes forever for Explorer to actually index and show the root. So here we can click on C here, and we get in. Either way, I could have clicked here, there. I can even write in directly up here in the address if I want to. But now I'm in the hard drive. I've now put the Explorer Utforskaren to the hard drive, to C:, and we can see there are lots of folders here. Many of these are to do with the operating system or programs that we've installed or have been installed for us, or programs that are installed together with the operating system. You can see here that Windows, big clue there, probably a lot of stuff to do with Windows in there, but also a lot of the stuff that we consider to be maybe part of Windows experience are actually stored in one of these two folders. The difference between them is not important right now, but they're both used for the same job. One is 32-bit, one is 64-bit, doesn't matter. And then we have this thing here, Anvender, it's called here, or users. And it should be, this is an automatic translation, it's actually stored, it's just because my operating, or the system is set up to be shown in Swedish, it automatically translates this name on the fly to Anvender. If you click on there, we get these subfolders. These three, default, delat, shared, and administrator, they're always going to be there. And this one, this is my username. So this is where my stuff is. These are the ones we won't bother going into, but this is for me. And you'll have the same experience on if it's your computer, on your C drive on your computer. This is where your stuff is stored, the stuff that is specific to you, not for the operating system or programs, but your stuff that you do is stored somewhere under your name on the computer, directly under users. You'll have some sort of username, whatever it is, and there's a folder that's equivalent to that name, and it's stored there. And then we have in here, we have a whole lot of icons. Actually, the vast majority of these are all folders of some sort. One or two, maybe not, but they're all folders basically, containing different files, but they've just been symbolized. The little icon next to them doesn't always look like a folder. We have different variants here. We have this grayed out one here that's normally hidden, contains data relevant to programs that I have installed on my computer, not ones that have been installed by the administrator or that follow along with the operating system, but ones that I have actually installed. Then we have these doc folders here. If you're familiar with any sort of Unix system, this is similar there. These are supposedly hidden. They're extra folders that the user doesn't really need to know about, so like settings and stuff like that for specific programs are stored there. The ones we're really interested in right now, we just focus on documents. So directly under my user, I have something called documents. If we look in here, it's a whole load of folders for different things. I'm keeping order in my system. And for example, I have a folder here called SVG051 for the GIS course. So if you click on that, we can see here that we have something that looks remarkably like what you are supposed to create. I have a few more exercise folders here because this has got all of the exercises in it already done. In the beginning of the course, you don't have as many of these, but what you should have is raw data. Now this you download as a file, a zip file, and you extract it into the SVG051 folder, and then you can delete the zip file and you have the raw data. Looks like that inside. Good. And then we have the docs folder. This is where all the instructions you will download week by week. You can store them there to come back to them, as well as a couple of other things. And then we have this final folder for putting in PDFs and such things for PNGs for submitting to through Canvas. So that's the things you want to deliver. This is done. This is my answer. This is what I want to be graded. We can keep it there. We know that that's the right thing, because you might create some files that just, just test files to see what things look like and not be happy with them. You can throw those, of course, or you just wait until you get the good one, put that in the final folder. You know that everything in final is good. It just keeps ordering things. And then all of these exercise 1, exercise 2, and so on, they have been created automatically by ArcGIS when I asked ArcGIS to start a new project for me. And I told it, save the project in this SVG051 folder. I also have a little extra folder there, an extra project for testing things out for the course, but you don't need that. That's just, I've got that. So that's the basic layout that you will create, but you're not going to create it on C on your computer. Let's go back to the remote desktop. So let's just quickly look at remote desktop. We did this, we downloaded this file, and then we opened up remote desktop. And what you need to do is make sure that you have a folder called document or documents, something along those lines. It might already have been created for you. You might have done it earlier. If not, then you just right click somewhere here and then new folder, create a new folder and call it documents. or document. So whatever your preference is, but something along those lines. And avoid spaces, avoid Swedish letters, and I need to just keep it simple, straightforward. There's a reason for this. Some elements of some programs are quite old and they can't handle spaces and they can't handle strange non-ASCII letters. What that means is basically just stick to A to Z, no Swedish letters, no funny symbols. It's just so that the older components of certain programs don't start complaining. So if we look in documents here, I've got a dummy project. This is a false course name. Instead of SPG 051, it's just ABC 123. Simple. And if we look inside there, we can see that we've got a similar layout. Instead of exercise 1, rather we've got this thing called edit. That's just an alternative way of doing it. So if this is a different course, we might not create a new project each week. We might just have a layout like this, but it's got the same basic structure. And that's stored on homes. And this is our address bar up here. We can see that where we are now, if we start at homes, whatever that location is, and then we look for something called document, and then we look for something called ABC 123, we'll end up here. So this is like an address, a path to this document. If we click there, we can see that actually it looks like that more. This is the more technical kind of description, that the path that you will actually need if you were to put this into another program somewhere for whatever reason. If that doesn't make sense to you, then don't worry about it right now. So that's all fair enough, and that we can access via homes, and we're there again. We can look at documents, but we even have here this PC. What does that mean? If we click on that, that's this computer. If you remember in this view here, when I clicked on, where's it gone? We have Windows there. There we have this computer. That's equivalent to this PC. It's just that it has the name. It has this computer name. That's just same thing. So if we look here, you can see we've got all these drives. We don't have a C colon. This is because on this remote desktop, the IT department has decided you don't need access to C colon, and you don't. There's no need for you to go to C colon, so it's not visible to you. It's there in the background somewhere, but you don't really need to access it. So why make it available via Explorer? It's not needed. But we can click here. This is homes, H colon. I've been calling it H colon all this time. We can see these various different names for it. You recognize that perhaps? That came up recently in the address bar. And if you click there, we end up at the same place. And we can go click on document there, and there's that ABC 123. We click on that, and there we are. And we can see, oh, this. If we look at this address now, it's got all of them, all of the bits. This computer. And then we've gone to homes, which was actually // add personal, or H colon. Lots of different names, somewhat confusing. But actually, when we click on the address bar now up here, we can see that it gets shortened to H colon document. These are all alternative. This, once we're here, past this first slash, document ABC, that's all the same. The first bit gets changed around. It can be very confusing why it does that. It's not important. It just does. Just know that we need to go to H colon homes. That's why that's called H homes, same thing. And then we go to document. So that's where you're going to be working. That's where you're going to be doing all this sort of thing. And the reason I want you to actually create a folder called document is that, as you can see already straight under H colon or homes, there's a lot of mess here already, and hunting around for different project folders and stuff. It's just going to be, it's just going to make life a little bit more complicated. If you just know to go to your document there, that's where all of your courses are. All of your coursework, put it there and create a little folder for each course. Simplest thing, then you know where stuff is. Then you don't end up submitting the wrong file to Canvas, wasting time, lowering your grade unnecessarily, because you then end up being late delivering the work because you sent the wrong file in or something. All sorts of nonsense. And this happens. This is not just exaggeration. This happens all the time. Just keep track of where your files are. So that's what it looks like. So this is this big window here. that's the contents. Now we're in this folder, we're in documents. And if I click here, we are in the ABC123 folder. This is the address starting from a root, which happens to be this computer, which is actually the remote desktop kind of thing. And then we go to homes, which is this drive space where, like the server space where we can store data. You as a student can store data stored for you at the university. And then within homes, we have document there, and then ABC123, which is a fake course name I just made up, course name, and then all these subfolders to keep ordering things. You might not need as much order for other courses. Other courses don't require as much data, they don't create as many files. But certainly for GIS remote sensing, this you should do, you must do. Otherwise, things will get very messy very quickly and you will get lost. So that was basically the computer, the Explorer. This window here is our Explorer. We have our computer here. We can go to H:, folders, folders, and subfolders. So that's what Explorer looks like. Let's just quickly look at some data files. Well, one last thing I can show you here is how to access the programs. We have the program folder here, and what that does is it simply opens up a new Explorer window. So this is a second window but at a particular location so that we can find different programs. And if we click on geomatics, we can go, we have a whole lot of programs here. Most of those we have Google Earth Pro. If you don't have it installed yourself, you can, it's free, you can download it as well, but if you don't want to, it's here on Explorer, on remote desktop. We have ArcGIS up there, click there, ArcGIS Pro, and there we have ArcGIS Pro. That you will need later. So that's the remote desktop, but let's now return instead to my local computer because it's just going to be easier for me to work with that. So what we're going to do now is look at some files and what happens to our files and how they can behave and misbehave, or rather just how they get changed. So if I find a good place, let's go to documents there, and we'll go to this SVG 051. We look here. So now I'm in this location, C users. Here you can see that Anvendra is actually users. And then my name documents SVG 051, and I have all these folders here. So if I click in this test area project, it's this stuff where I just show it's not connected to any particular exercise. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to work in here. I'm going to create a couple of files to illustrate a couple of points. And we're going to open up Notepad++, which is a very good program for writing text files, plain text files. This is going to be, if we look down here, in UTF-8, which is basically an extended version of ASCII, plain text. And I can write, this is a text, and this is text. And let's just do something like design. And there's a gap there in between. Right, so that's very basic text, and all it is just some text, and we'll save that. Where are we going to save it? We're going to save it. Let's save it here, and we'll just call that plain text file 1, and it's going to be stored as a TXT file. Fine, let's just save it there. Good, we've done that. Now I'm going to start open up another plain text file. Let's just do that. Let's click on this. We have a second file now. This one will be a little bit different. We'll make a CSV file of this. So PDN, just simple. Point number 1. Easting is 1000, northing is 1000. Point number 2, easting is 1000, northing is 2000. Point number 3, easting is 2000, northing is 2000. Point number 4, oh, let's just push the boat out of this and go there and there. It's a simple square. Right, fine. Let's just save that. But now we need to be a little bit more careful. We're going to save it in the same location. We'll call this simple table, but not txt. We'll get rid of that. We don't want that. We're going to call it .csv, comma, separated values. Press enter, and it's been saved. Here we have the two files. So now, if we go to our Explorer again, we're in this, we can see the files have been created. Plain text file 1, simple table, CSV. If I right click on this, I can actually select open with. Now, I can open it with Notepad and Technica. Let's do that quickly. And it looks the same. It's just a simple plain text file. Good. If I right click on it and I open with, well, let's start with WordPad. Start with WordPad and it looks the same. That all looks very good. But what happens if I do, say, this, make that bold? I couldn't make the text bold before. And if I make that italics, and what happens if I make that underline? Okay, and now I'm going to save that. Be careful, I'm going to save as. And I want to save it as rich text, plain text file 1, we'll call it plain text file 2. You guys got a different file ending. Let's just keep things in order here. Good. Right, so let's close that down. So now we have this second file. It's got a different icon. But what we can do is right click on it, click on open with, and we're going to go to Notepad++. Okay. And all of a sudden, it looks different. If we compare this to our simple text file, that looked like that, now we have a whole lot of other mess in there. Why do we have this? This is a set of instructions to programs that can understand it to turn the text into boldface, italics, underline, and also a little bit of metadata to tell us that that's what this type of file is, which we can even see that it's got the typeface stored in it, Korean new. That wasn't. We don't have anything like that in this text file. This we can open, we could change if we want. We can change the settings and change the font, but it's not going to be stored. It's just going to be how it's visualized in the computer. Whereas here we have a specific instruction and it's being ignored here. So that doesn't matter because this is a text editor and it doesn't visualize the text prettily. That WordPad does. Let's just go one step further with that. And how about if we then open that with Word? So let's open that with Word. And we can see the Word also reads this formatting, and we have the bold text there, and we have this italic there, and we have the underlining there. But if I now save that as, go to Browse, got that there. Let's save it instead of RTF, let's save it as a doc, and we'll call that number 3, just for the fun of it. Okay. And then we can close that down. And now we can see that we've got 3 files here. And if I open that one with Notepad++, oof, what a mess. Suddenly there's a lot more in there. I mean, this just goes on. I mean, there's a whole load of stuff. What this is our plain text program, Notepad++, is interpreting all of the binary code that it's reading as being text, as being UTF-8, or in this case, ANSI, which is type of ASCII, doesn't matter. And it just makes its best guess, and it looks like this mess. But what this is telling us when you see this sort of thing is, oh, we've got a load of binary stuff in here, loads of instructions telling the computer program to do something. And that's what we can see here. But essentially the view was exactly the same as this. It did nothing more than this was doing. And this is just a fancification of this. So if this is the relevant part of your text, if that's all that's important, and you don't need the bold or the italic or the underline, well, that's it. That's the text file. And let's quickly look at something here. The plain text file took up 1 kilobyte of space there. The RTF took up 1 kilobyte of space. Even though there's a little bit more information in it, they're both as big, which may seem a little odd. But then the doc, well, that's a lot bigger. That's 13 kilobytes. Let's see what we can get out. If we look at this, go to here, we can see the size is 92 bytes on the plain text file. On this, what do we get? We get, that was not the right thing. There we go. And there we've got 283 bytes. Still not 1 kilobyte, considerably smaller. So why are they both being shown as 1 kilobyte? Because that's the smallest. It's taking up that much space on the disk. Because of the way the addresses work for the computer, it has to allot a minimum amount of space. So whichever file you create is going to be 1 kilobyte big, even though the actual amount of data is much smaller than that. But because of the way it has to search for the information on the hard disk, it's at least 1 kilobyte big. That's the smallest it can be on the hard disk. And then if we look at this, we'll see this is somewhat smaller than 13 kilobytes perhaps, but it's going to be bigger than 12. Yeah, 12.1 kilobytes. Just a little bit over, and therefore it's 13, because it had to take another kilobyte in space in order to store the data. And similarly, when we look at the CSV file, now that we created that in our text editor, but we can open that with Excel. So let's go to it, or let's just quickly look at it in Notepad again. We can see it's the same thing there because this is a plain text editor. We can do the same. Same thing with WordPad. WordPad is just going to do that. It looks nice. If we start formatting it, it'll change things. We can come back to that and test it later if you want. But what we actually want to open up this with is Excel. So we open it up with Excel. And here we have columns of data in an Excel file with our headers there. Well, good. So let's just save that. So save as, and we'll save it as a simple table, but instead of CSV, we'll save it as an Excel file. Save. So now we saved it as an Excel. We've done nothing more. It's still got exactly the same 3 columns and the 4 rows of data and a row of headers. Close that down, and here we can see that all of a sudden that file has become a lot larger. That's 10 times as large. Because we haven't, and that's also going to be one of these weird sort of lots of binary data in their instructions telling the program what to do that we can't read. So nice and simple becomes quite complex. Of course, as a CSV file in a text editor, all it is dumb text, and we can't do anything else with it. Whereas if we open this up in Excel, we can start doing things in each cell. We can start adding numbers up and multiplying them and all sorts of stuff in Excel. So that's the big advantage of Excel. And what's the point in this? Well, apart from showing us different file sizes and what happens, it also tells us that we have to be very careful when we're trying to export files and change them and go between different programs, because what may look to be a simple text file can actually contain a lot of nonsense that's irrelevant. A lot of programs nowadays can handle that and they can deal with the excess information. They understand that there might be something in there, but some of them can't. And sometimes that extra data is a little confusing. So if we only need to use a text file, we should use a text file. If we have a more complicated format, well, okay, we can accept that in a lot of cases, but not always. For example, we can import an Excel file into ArcGIS Pro, but we can also import a CSV file. And it's a lot easier to write a CSV file in many cases. So that's the main points of that. Okay, I think we can end that there.